and welcome to The Citizen Takes the Mic. Today we're speaking to Aneesha Labroo, who is the founder of an activewear brand called Kica. But Aneesha, today we're chatting with you about something quite different, about your egg freezing journey. So I just want to hand this over to you. I just want you to take us through the process in as much detail as possible, because I think it is very, very useful to people, sort of like now who are approaching their 30s or in their 30s. It's a conversation that, I like walk into, or I'm surrounded by quite a bit. And what I've noticed is that it usually happens very privately. Like, people are now open about it, but they still like talk to their friends or their peer groups or their parents, and that's it. So I thought when I saw like you sharing your journey, and it wasn't just me, I mean, my colleague had the idea of speaking to you. I think it was just nice to see someone sharing the experience in that much detail publicly, because considering that so many people are considering this at this point in their lives, I think they would like to know exactly what it's like. So just in as much detail as you can, just take us through the thought process, how you decided to, sort of like freeze your eggs, why now, and then the journey of what it was like, maybe a little bit day by day or whatever it might be.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me. And I think, when I sort of think about egg freezing, it's actually not very much like me to share something like that on social. But exactly like you said, I've heard so many people talking about it in their smaller groups or amongst friends. And there's honestly like so much confusion I feel around it. And where the gynecologist is like, no, don't think about egg freezing, find a partner. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
was
easy.
mind blown by that. Like, I just remember being so angry hearing that, because what do you mean? Like, you want to rush someone into finding a partner so they can have a baby, like, based on this timeline? So, yeah, I mean, exactly what you said. I think I have an amazing gynecologist who was kind of just like, you're so young, but okay, fine, do the work to figure this out. And yeah, like the blood test and the ultrasound, both, honestly, when I got it done, you know, you don't like, you think you're healthy, you think that like you do everything right, so your numbers should be fine. And the truth is that when I did see those results, I kind of was like, oh God, like this is worse situation than I thought. And again, going back to your point, none of those things determine tomorrow if I decide to have a baby, am I going to be able to do it immediately or not? And I think like even with friends now who are like getting into doing this research, they do this blood test and you test your AMH levels and they see like crazy low AMH levels and they're like, I'm never going to be able to have a baby.
But that's also something I noticed, sorry to interrupt again, but like more and more people that are testing are getting these low AMH numbers. And I almost feel like maybe these numbers need a big disclaimer that, they are not really the only marker of your fertility, because I had low AMH numbers and maybe TMI, but I conceived both my children within the first month of trying. So that's the case with a lot of people that initially had, low AMH numbers. So, and that's why I just want to flag this, because just because you've gone and done a blood test and you have low AMH numbers doesn't mean that you're not fertile. I think if you've been struggling to conceive for a year or something, and then they see that you have low AMH numbers, then they might read a little bit into it. But just having low AMH numbers is not an indicator of your fertility.
Not at all. Yeah. And also, like, they say that okay, fine, your AMH declines with age, which yes, that's right. But my AMH, also firstly lab to lab, it changes. But my AMH from July of last year to January of this year to April of this year were insanely different numbers.
There you go.
And that could have been the timing of my period, like on what day I did it was like 1 versus 2, how stressed I was at the time that I did it. There's so many factors that play a role into your AMH number that, yeah, exactly what you said. Like, it does not determine are you going to be able to have a kid or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, like if it fluctuates, which it's not supposed to fluctuate so much, it means that there's the testing that's making it fluctuate. So people shouldn't panic just because they've taken a blood test and they have low AMH. So then you obviously rightfully so got a little concerned, and
and I went to meet the egg doctor, and she looked at those numbers and obviously I think I did an ultrasound somewhere else, and then she looked at that and did say that yes, it is something that you should do, like you should look into doing if you don't have a plan for the next 2 years. and I don't, right? So that's why I was like, okay, cool. How soon should I do it? She was like, I mean, it's not like you have to do it today, but yeah, look at doing it in the next few months because it's only beneficial for you to start now versus doing it like 6 months down the line. Because I mean, your numbers would be better today than later, right? So they also say there's a lot of factors you should consider. Like you should not do it when you're stressed out. Like if you have a lot going on in your life at that time, it's not a good time for you. And so for me, it was a good time because I just felt like I was ready to do it. I had like it's sort of mentally and emotionally, I was in the right place to do it. Work also, like I knew would be able to sort of accommodate any, breaks in me coming to the office and things like that. So with everything aligned, I decided that I think I met her in January and I decided that by April, May, I wanted to do it. And the reason I also wanted a few months was because the same way, like it's very much like how you think about when you're getting pregnant, like you want to be in the healthiest. I think you're like someone who really sort of has like embodied that you want to be as healthy as you can through that process, right? So similarly, this is for your future child potentially. So I wanted to spend like a few months on, I mean, just let's say like cutting down things like sugar, alcohol, being like I do work out all the time, so didn't really change anything with that, and food as well wasn't too much of a change. But I would say for people who maybe don't have the best habits, like now is the time to think about, if you're thinking about freezing your eggs, it's a great time to like look at a 3-4 month period to try to become like the healthiest version of yourself that you can without doing anything extreme. Nothing extreme is required, but small changes I feel like go a long way in sort of like ensuring that you can get the best quality eggs that you possibly could. So I did that for 3 months. So starting Jan, Feb, March, April, I just again like I said, moderation. Didn't drink as much as I would normally. Let's say if I was going out like my regular life, I go out once a week. I'll drink once a week for sure. Sometimes twice a week. I just cut down. That was it. I just cut down on that. The month leading up to my egg freezing, I didn't touch alcohol at all. And again, these are things that I sort of read and listened to and thought that it was the best decision for me. I'm not saying that it's like prescribed at all. No one is gonna say like do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things. But after listening to like endless podcasts and listening to other people who went through this sort of the same process, those are decisions I made for myself. And so leading up to it, you don't have to do anything other than, at least I didn't have to. Again, like based on your levels of, different like estrogen, testosterone, all those things, you may have to go on the pill, for example, to get certain levels in order. So I personally don't know exactly what the process is if you have to go through something else. For me, there was nothing I had to do leading up to it. I just had to go in when I was ready to on day 2 of my period, and then they would sort of do the scan and start the process. So I got my period May 1st. May 2nd, I went in to the clinic and they did a scan. They also determined like your dosage. So the first day that you go, they sort of decide like a baseline dosage. Again, factors like your age, your weight, your current levels, they take all of that into consideration and then decide that, okay, this is how much of whatever the injection is, I guess estrogen, but whatever the injection is, that is how much they'll administer to you. And so that's why I started with 1 injection a day. And for the first 5 days, I just got that injection. I didn't have to do anything else. Okay. So I remember even through those 5 days, I was like, is anything happening? Like, I was like really tired. And I was like, is this just like me being tired or is this something to do with the hormones? Like you have no idea what's happening. So, but by like day 3, I knew for sure I was insanely tired.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. And I've heard that a lot, like with women who get pregnant in their first trimester. like exhaustion was like the number one thing,
I think the
right?
hardest part, like for me, it was the hardest part for my pregnancy was the exhaustion. Like, and that's how I
Yeah,
actually knew both times that I was pregnant. It was just an insane. And now because it is all hormonal, and it's what you said
correct.
earlier that hormones affect different women differently. So I have friends who didn't even know that they were pregnant till like 2 or 3 months in, just because they
Yeah,
didn't get that extreme exhaustion. But for me, the hormones did, and I think for a majority of women that does happen. So like exhaustion, I guess is even one of the side effects, or not side effects, but one of the manifestations of these injections as well, quite clearly.
for sure, 100%. And I guess it does kind of mimic a pregnancy, right? Like that's what you're tricking your body into doing. So exhaustion was, and that's what I kept, whoever I spoke to, like, again, everyone had such different experiences with what the hormones did to them, that like I kept being like, this exhaustion is like it for me right now. Like that is all I feel. And like you, I'm a very active person, so I was immediately able to like tap into that, being like, this is not normal, this is because of the hormones for sure. um and then after day 5, I went in for a scan, which is when they basically do a vaginal scan to see how the injections are affecting the size of your follicles. So um they obviously, like, at retrieval they want the follicles to be a certain size. I think it's 18 to 20 and they essentially from day 1 till retrieval, they're helping you grow the follicles to that size. And so they do frequent scans and checks and blood tests and everything, just to make sure that it is growing as per that plan. And that's why you actually don't know when you will be ready for your retrieval, because no one knows how you're going to react to the hormones. So
Yeah, so
on
this
day
was
5,
surprising to me. I saw you post that. I always thought that, okay, it's a 12-day plan or a 14-day plan and you just go through it. So this was insightful that they kind of like review it at some point and then decide how much more you're going to need depending on how the follicles are responding to the medicine.
yeah,
Okay.
they're like very on top of that. Like it's really, really very frequent, the amount of checks they do to see how it's growing. So on day 5, I thought I was going in and I was going to know exactly what date I'll get my retrieval, how many days of injections I would get. So actually, what happened on day 5 was like they said, okay, it's fine, it's too small to really say anything, but you'll have 9 or 10 days of injections. And I was like, cool. And then they upped my dosage to 2 injections on that day. And I had to go back in after 3 days. So when I went back in after 3 days, they were like, oh, damn, your follicles are not growing as per the size that they should be at all. So they call them slow growing. So I was like, oh God, now what does that mean? um, and essentially it was just like, okay, they should have been bigger by now. So they increased your dosage. And she was very clear that I would not be at 9 or 10 days and it would go over that. So again, like, still not clear, would that be 11 days, 12 days? No idea. But
And
clearly, like, they needed.
did that uncertainty like have any bearing on like how prepared you were for this, or did you just manage to like go with the flow?
I think on that day I was like quite like flustered, because I was like, okay, what does that mean? Like, if it's slow moving, because for me, like, I'm a planner. I want to know exactly how many days this is going to go on for. But then I messaged my friend who had been through it, and I was like, look, she told me this. And my friend was like, okay, just assume it's going to be 12 days, because I heard the same thing on this day. And you have to just go with it. So again, like, I think support was incredible for me at through this process. Like, 2 or 3 girls I spoke to, and I would just, after every scan, message them and be like, here's what the doctor said, now she's saying this, what does that mean? And just hearing that, okay, like, this happened to me too, and expect it to be like that, was really helpful for me, and sort of calmed me down as well, because I was just like, I hate not knowing. So yeah, so I definitely was kind of like, how many more days? Like, I just want to know my plan. But after that, after speaking to them, I was like, okay, it's fine, let's just go with it. And so then after that, my scans became even more frequent. It was like every other day. So I think after day 7, it was almost every day actually. And they upped my dosage. So I was getting 3 injections every day. And I honestly, like, other than, like I said, the exhaustion, I was a little bit like, I would say tender in that area. but I wasn't like really uncomfortable. And a lot of people had told me post day 7, it becomes ridiculously uncomfortable. So again, like everyone's experience is so different. I was glad that that wasn't happening to me. But like, yeah, just for me, like I would come home from work, take a nap. I would try to go and walk every day, but it was like, I mean, I did do it, but I really pushed myself to do it. Like I did not want to do, and just, yeah, like slight tenderness, and that was it. And then by day, I guess 11, so 10, 11, 12, I went 1, 2, 3 days back to back, and they kind of were just like, okay, are we gonna be able to do your retrieval in 2 days or not? So I didn't know again until day 12 that they were like, okay, now you're ready. So they told me on day 12 you'll get a trigger shot. So that's the shot that you get 36 hours before your retrieval. And I got that shot at night. So you get it at 10 p.m. at night, and then you have to go like not the following day, but the day after that. Yeah, at 8 a.m. to the hospital, and it's basically you get general anesthesia, and you're knocked out, and they retrieve the eggs, I think microscopically. And so after the trigger shot, that next day was like brutal for me. That was my worst day out of any day of the entire egg freezing process. I was just a zombie walking around and extremely bloated and sensitive in that ovary area. Obviously, because now your ovaries are actually physically enlarged. So like I couldn't wear my pants. Like none of my pants fit me. I didn't even want to wear pants, like that was the feeling of like just keep that area completely comfortable.
Especially in this heat. Like
especially in this
thing
heat.
you need.
Yeah. And then the next day I went, the procedure itself was super quick. It was like 15, 20 minutes. You're just like obviously knocked out. I woke up, I was kind of groggy, but no pain, nothing.
And yeah, just 15, 20 minutes, you said it was that
yeah,
quick. Okay.
It was very quick. So if I went in at 8, my procedure was at 9. I was out by 9:20, and then they kept me there till around like lunch. And I was a little bit groggy and stuff. And I went home. I slept for a while, like 2, 3 hours. But everyone told me that I had also read and watched again, like there's so many influencers in the States who posted about it, and I watched all of their videos. A lot of people said post retrieval, they don't feel so great. And I actually did not feel good at all for about a week after my retrieval.
Physically or mentally or like both?
Physically,
okay.
Physically, entirely physically. Yeah. So actually, a big thing that everyone says is like you're super moody, and you're like emotional, and you cry at random things. So for me, I didn't feel very emotional, but and I was a little bit moody, but like almost just like a normal PMS, Yeah. I mean, maybe I PMS really badly, I don't know. but it was like that kind of mood.
Yeah, so nothing extreme, just basically your base.
No.
Okay.
Exactly, nothing extreme. But yeah, for the week after, I actually found it like really difficult to eat meals, and I would just be in pain after every single meal I would eat. And so I took like Pandy and all those whatever to try to help with that. But I guess it's natural. It's like your intestines are firstly working slower because of the general anesthesia. Then your ovaries are still enlarged. And I did go back to get checked, just to like, I don't know, just to make sure that everything was fine. And like your ovaries take a few days to come back to normal size. Again, I think that's like dependent on from person to person. But when I went on like a Wednesday, my retrieval was on a Thursday, my left ovary was still enlarged. And that's why they say do not work out after, at least for 10 days after you're done with your retrieval. And yeah, so like I think that was one thing. And I just generally didn't feel good. Like I was feeling unwell. I felt like quite like I told the doctor this, that I was randomly feeling like short of breath, like kind of dizzy. And she was like, that can't be really related to this. But I just didn't feel good. Like if there was any time I didn't feel good, it was the week after my retrieval.
Yeah, and I get it, because I think you're probably also in tune with how you feel on a regular basis. So you're pretty feeling your best. So when you don't feel your best, you're maybe more sensitive to it than other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask two quick questions sort of before we wrap up. One
Yeah.
is that how did you feel knowing that the process was kind of like done? Was it like a big relief? Was it like, okay, now I have taken charge of my fertility, my eggs are stockpiled? Was it an empowering feeling? Because I know, and the reason I ask this is because I know a lot of people who are on the fence. I think they're not, sort of going ahead with it because of some of the concerns that anyone might have, whether it's, weight gain or not being able to work out or it's stress or whatever their circumstances might be. But after you were done with it, just give me an idea of how you felt. Like, was it like just an incredibly empowering feeling or what was it?
Yeah, that was literally it. Like my friend also was like, "Oh, you're gonna feel amazing after this." And honestly, through the process, I just felt blah. Like I never actually linked what I was doing to the fact that like I'm actually doing something for my future. But once I was done, I felt so good. I felt exactly like you said, empowered that I made this choice. And yes, you sacrifice a lot of things. You go through your body, you're putting your body through like something that is unnatural at the end of the day. But the fact that you're doing it for your future feels incredible. Like I felt like free. I remember like a week after when I was like eating something or doing something, I was just like, oh my God, I don't have to worry about anything. Like I've done this. It's in the, it's there for me to use when I want to and when I'm ready to. And it's like such an empowering decision. And exactly what you said, people have been messaging me. So many women have messaged me with their like they're on the fence, they're apprehensive about so many different things, and I totally understand those feelings, but I'm like, nothing beats the fact that you're doing this for your future, and it's a period of maximum 3-4 months of like, let's say, not being entirely yourself to secure something like that. It's like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I think that's important because we don't realize as women how hardwired, and I'm not saying this is the case for everybody, but I mean, it was for me, how hardwired our biological clock is in our heads. Like, so the moment I turned 30, I remember I wasn't even married when I was 30, but like I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, now I need to have babies soon. And it's almost like this unrealistic expectation, which is maybe not conducive to where you are in your life at that point of time. Um, and you don't realize that maybe that's what's, then it affects like, feeling happy for somebody who is having children or whatever it might be. You realize you're not feeling necessarily happy for someone else because that's what you wanted for yourself. So I feel like just taking charge of your fertility is such a, I mean, thank God for modern medicine because it just gives you the
Yeah,
ability to free yourself from those biological shackles that are actually like suited to a very, very different time. So good on you for doing it,
exactly.
and thank you for being so open about it because I really do think it will benefit a lot of people. And one last question, because I mean, I do think a lot of people would think this from just, more uh I don't know, vanity point of view, or is it just me that thinks along those lines? But you posted that, you were worried about gaining weight and you kind of like came with the mindset that like whatever it was, it's temporary, it's going to go. So just sort of take us through how you dealt with that. Did you gain weight? Was it something that like just was water weight and it came off very quickly? Or just your
Yeah.
mindset, that part of it?
So I honestly have not the best relationship with like my body and weight because I have gone through so many like ups and downs with it my whole life. So going into it, it wasn't on my mind. It was not a decision that affected, it was not a factor that affected my decision. But yes, it was on my mind a lot. And that means like every day, whenever I was eating, whatever I was eating, I was conscious of the fact that I did not want to put on weight. I did not put on weight through the process at all. But I like in hindsight, like realized that I spent a lot of time thinking about that too. When you're supposed to be using this time to be kind to yourself and like just let your body be, I was stressed about that. And I look back at, I mean, even now I'm like, I hate that that's how it was for me, but that's because it's so complicated of a sort of, it's a complex thing for me, like weight gain.
And
So,
not just you, Aneesha, so many people. I mean, I don't think it's just you, which is
yeah,
why I asked that question. I do know that is something that a lot of people will think that A, am I putting artificial stuff in me? B, am I going to gain weight? And then these
yeah,
become barriers to it. But like you said, like, I mean, you spent a lot of time thinking of it, and then in the end, you hadn't even really gained that much weight or gained any weight.
Yeah.
And like,
But
weight,
a lot of people ask that, like they're like, and actually a lot of people who went through it did message me and they're like, oh, I haven't lost, I put on weight through this process, put on 3 kgs in a month. And I can imagine that to be really stressful. I would be a mess, I think, if that happened to me. But again, like it is an unnatural hormonal imbalance. Your hormones will come back to like what they were or improve, right? Like if you do the right things. And that's why educating yourself on, I think, like the way that your hormones work is so important. It is temporary. At the end of the day, it will restore back to normal.
yeah.
So yeah.
And that's also something about like gaining weight, because even, I mean, I have my own relationship with weight gain, but like, I mean, 2 pregnancies, I did gain a significant amount of weight. And you do realize that as long as you have the discipline and the habits and you have the healthy lifestyle, weight is probably the easiest thing in a way to like reset or get back. I mean, it might take its own time. But yeah, I still understand why people have those apprehensions going into it. On that note, I think I'm going to let you go. And thank you for sort of joining us for this today and also for being so public about it. I think it is really going to benefit a lot of people. And if anyone wants more information, I think you do have a highlight on your Instagram page as of now that kind of like details it day by day, which I actually really, even though, I mean, I'm done with my kids, no more babies, none of that. I still was so curious about the process, maybe because I'd always thought that, okay, if I don't have my kids by this age, it is something that I would do. I actually followed it in great detail. And, you know, normally I just scroll past like whatever I'm seeing, but I actually read everything and was very interested in it. So I think that's going to be very useful for whoever is considering this process. So yeah.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on this. I'm really glad that you guys are also speaking about it and trying to normalize something like this, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing a sort of more inclusive future as far as like women, fertility, and all of these things are concerned. I think we're seeing a very pivotal shift, but we'll chat about that another time.
Yeah.
So back to work. Thanks.
Thank you so much.